I want to take you back to a very specific moment in time.
Yeah.
Think about the year 2018. Do you remember just the sheer volume of noise?
Oh, absolutely.
It felt like every single time you opened a browser or turned on the TV, there was this like frantic red alert panic about young men.
It was the era of the incel rebellion. I mean, it wasn't just some internet subculture anymore, right? It was front page news.
Yep.
You had the van attacks in Toronto. You had manifestos being dissected on CNN. It felt like a genuine cultural emergency.
It really, really did. There was this, this pervading fear that an entire generation of men was just spiraling into this violent, woman-hating cult.
Right.
The terms were everywhere. Incel, Chad, Stacy,
Yeah.
MGTOW. It felt like the start of something, I don't know, massive and terrifying.
It felt like a tidal wave was coming.
But here's the weird thing, and this is why we're doing this deep dive today. Flash forward. It's 2026. 8 years later. And it's quiet.
Unsettlingly quiet.
I mean, the forums are still there if you know where to look. But that visceral moral panic, it's gone.
Moved on.
The culture has moved on to AI wars and climate tech and whatever else is trending. But that silence, it leaves this massive unanswered question just hanging in the air.
Right. We spent years analyzing why they were angry. We did the sociology, we blamed the economy, dating apps, whatever. But we stopped asking what happened next.
Yeah, what happened?
The question now is, where did they go?
Did they vanish? Did they evolve? Did they just grow up?
Yeah.
To answer that, we are looking at a really fascinating piece by Ryan Collison. It's called Incels and MGTOW in 2026. A welfare check.
It's part of his retrospective series on toxic masculinity, and it's just so insightful because it treats this not like a monster movie, but as a demographic reality.
Exactly.
And that's what makes his work stand out. He takes this clinical, almost pragmatic look at this group. And the answer to where did they go isn't one single path. He actually identifies 4 distinct pathways.
Okay.
And I have to say, some of them are genuinely surprising, and one of them, one of them is significantly darker than all the noise of 2018 ever was.
So let's unpack this. Because the answer isn't just they disappeared. It's way more complex. Let's start with pathway 1, which Collison calls aging out.
Right.
And I have to be honest, this one, it feels a little too convenient to me at first glance. Like, you're telling me these guys posting vile, hateful things just got over it.
I know, it sounds dismissive, but look at the biology for a second. If you analyze the user base of those, black pill forums in 2018, who are they?
Young.
Overwhelmingly men in their late teens and very early 20s.
Okay, so peak angst years.
Peak angst, but also peak neuroplasticity, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles emotional regulation, long-term planning, all that stuff.
Impulse control.
Right, impulse control. It isn't fully cooked until you're about 25.
Right.
So Collison's point is that a huge percentage of this incel army wasn't radicalized for life. They were just developmentally delayed.
So the 22-year-old posting doom content about how he'll never be loved.
Yeah.
He just wakes up as a 28-year-old with an entry-level job and a girlfriend.
In many, many cases, yeah. It's the natural attrition of radicalism. I mean, think about your own life. Do you hold the same intense, absolute beliefs you held at 19?
God, no. I don't even like the same bands.
Exactly. Social skills accumulate. You get a job. You're forced to interact with female colleagues. You realize the world isn't this hostile binary caricature that the forum told you it was. But here's the key insight from the article, and I think this explains the silence. These men do not announce their exit.
Right, you don't see a goodbye, I normal now post.
Never, because they're mortified. They look back on that whole phase, the lingo, the hopelessness, the anger, and they physically cringe.
It's shameful for them.
It's a massive source of shame. So they just ghost. They slip into normal society, they vote, pay taxes, and they bury that part of their history deep in the backyard.
That cringe factor is basically a survival mechanism. It's the door slamming shut on their past.
Precisely. And Collison mentioned something else here that I found really humanizing. He calls it the luck factor.
Oh, I loved this part, even though it feels incredibly unfair in a way.
It is totally random. Sometimes it wasn't about self-improvement or hitting the gym. Sometimes a guy just got lucky.
Right.
He met a partner who accepted his awkwardness. Maybe she thought his shyness was endearing, or she was just incredibly patient. And that one single relationship becomes a corrective experience.
It effectively breaks the spell.
It proves the entire ideology wrong. The black pill says you are unlovable because of your genetics. And then a woman loves you. the math just stops working.
And the whole thing collapses.
Instantly.
Okay, so that's pathway one.
Yeah.
The silent majority who just integrated and pretended it never happened.
Huh.
But then you have pathway two, which I think challenges our assumptions about why these guys were there in the first place. Collison calls this community replacement.
This is so crucial. We often assume these men were driven purely by the ideology, the hatred of women, the biological determinism. But Collison argues that for many, the ideology was just wallpaper.
Just decoration.
The house was built on loneliness.
So they didn't come for the hate. They came because they had nowhere else to go on a Friday night.
They needed belonging. They needed a place where they could say, I'm lonely and I'm hurting, and have someone say, I get it, instead of the standard advice, which is usually just,
Be more confident, bro.
be more confident, bro, which is terrible advice when you're 19 and terrified.
So what happens to this group by 2026?
They found better containers. That's the term Collison uses, containers. Maybe they joined a dedicated gaming Discord or a hobby group for Warhammer 40K or a coding collective.
And when they found a healthier container for that need to connect, the incel stuff just fell away.
Because it wasn't load-bearing. That's the key distinction. For the hardcore believers, the hate is the load-bearing wall.
Okay.
For this group, the hate was just the price of admission to get some friends. Once they got friends elsewhere, in a guild, in an MMO, say, they dropped the toxic baggage because they just didn't need it anymore.
They didn't need access to women's bodies. They just needed access to human beings.
That's it, exactly.
Okay, that's surprisingly hopeful. But we have to pivot. We have to talk about the third pathway. And this is where things get really, really interesting and honestly a little bizarre. This is the red pill to trad pipeline.
This is a fascinating sociological shift. So picture a guy in his 20s. He's deep in the red pill. He's cynical. He believes the game is rigged. He believes in hypergamy.
The idea that women only want top-tier men.
Exactly. And he thinks marriage is a financial death trap.
Right. The system is broken, don't play mentality. That was the whole MGTOW, men going their own way ethos.
But here's the problem. You can't live on pure cynicism forever. It's exhausting. You hit your 30s, maybe you still want a family, a legacy. Pure rejection isn't a sustainable life philosophy for most people.
So what do?
Well, what do? They can't just become liberals, so they pivot.
They pivot to trad, traditional values.
They adopt the whole aesthetic of the 1950s patriarch. But, and here is the catch, and Collison is very sharp on this, they keep the same gender analysis. They still believe modern women are broken, but they convince themselves they've found the cheat code.
Wait, explain the cheat code mindset.
So before, the mindset was, the system is rigged against me, I'm a victim. Now the mindset is, the system is rigged, but I'm smart enough to hack it.
Oh, okay.
They stop looking for a modern partner and start looking for a traditional wife, a trad wife, who will submit to their authority. The man goes from bachelor to patriarch.
It feels like a rebrand.
Yeah.
Like they just put on a suit and started smoking a pipe, but the internal logic is exactly the same.
It is a rebrand. And the danger, as Collison points out, is that the underlying resentment is still there. It's just dormant. They view women not as complex humans, but as role fulfillers.
You are here to be the correct kind of feminine.
Exactly. And that sounds great on a TikTok reel with, sourdough bread and pastoral music. But what happens when that trad wife has a bad day? Or an opinion?
Or just reveals she's a messy, complex human being.
That's when the system fails. The resentment leaks through. Because no human can live up to an archetype 24/7. But for many of these men, this trad lifestyle feels like a real solution. It gives them structure, and they get to feel like winners instead of victims.
Speaking of victims, we should touch on MGTOW briefly. You mentioned it. In 2018, men going their own way was huge on YouTube. Now,
Crickets, it's dead. As a brand, it is completely dead. Collison breaks it down well. Phase 1 was actually kind of tragic. It was mostly divorced dads who'd been just decimated by family courts.
okay.
They weren't necessarily hating women. They were just opting out of an institution that really hurt them.
But then came phase 2. The grifters.
The content machine. This was the era of guys claiming to go their own way, but spending 100% of their time making videos talking about women.
Which is literally the opposite of going your own way.
Right. If you leave a party, you don't stand in the driveway screaming about how much you don't want to be at the party. You just leave.
They stayed in the driveway.
They stayed in the driveway. Eventually, it just curdled into pure grievance. Platforms demonetized them, the audience got bored, and the sentiment just merged into the Passport Bros movement, or the trad content we just discussed.
Okay, I want to get to what I think is the absolute core of this article.
Yeah.
This is the part that just stopped me in my tracks. Collison describes a fork in the road for lonely young men. Two paths they can take, the weight room or the manifesto.
This is the most critical distinction in the whole piece. It's the difference between action and analysis.
Let's start with the weight room. And he doesn't just mean getting ripped for vanity.
Right, no, and that's a common misconception. It's not about looking like an action figure. It's about self-efficacy.
Okay.
Think about the world a lonely young man lives in. Dating apps are these opaque algorithms.
Oh.
Social dynamics are confusing. The economy's volatile. Nothing makes sense.
But the iron makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100 pounds is 100 pounds. When you go to the gym, you engage in a physical reality where your inputs equal your outputs. You tolerate discomfort, you stay consistent, and you see a result that you created.
It's undeniable proof of competence.
It is. And that competence spreads to other areas of your life. You realize, oh, I can change my reality through effort. But here's the most beautiful concept Collison introduces. The weight room allows for surprise.
What does he mean by surprise?
He means that in the process of acting, of lifting, of running, of learning a skill, you change. You might go in thinking, I need big arms to get girls, but you come out realizing, I actually just like feeling strong and disciplined.
The process transforms you.
In ways you could never have predicted. You become a different person.
Okay, so contrast that with the other path, the forum, the analysis.
This is the rumination pathway. This is sitting in a dark room at 3 a.m. reading theory about why you are doomed. And we need to talk about the specifics here because they're wild. They analyze bone structure. They analyze something called Canthal tilt.
Whoa, pause. Canthal tilt. You have to explain that.
Okay, so it refers to the angle of your eye. If the outer corner tilts up, it's a hunter eye. That's good. If it tilts down, it's prey eyes, and it's over for you.
You're telling me there were guys measuring the angle of their eyelids and deciding their life was over based on a few degrees.
Yes. And that is the absolute tragedy of the forum pathway. Collison calls these frameworks unfalsifiable.
Unfalsifiable how?
Well, if you decide that your biology, your wrist size, your Canthal tilt determines everything, then action is pointless.
Right.
If you try and fail, the framework says, see, it's your eyes. If you try and succeed, the framework says, oh, she's just using you for money.
It's a closed loop.
It is a closed loop of despair. It removes any possibility of surprise. You cannot learn anything new because you already know how the world works.
Wow.
The gym leads men out of the ideology because it reconnects them with reality. The forum digs them deeper because it traps them in this theoretical prison.
That is such a powerful way to frame it. Action versus rumination. Agency versus determinism.
Yeah.
But we have to address the elephant in the room. Not everyone chooses the gym. Not everyone finds a gamer friend. And not everyone grows up. This brings us to the fourth and final pathway, the one Collison calls the quiet ones.
This is the darkest outcome. And paradoxically, it's the one characterized by the silence we talked about at the very beginning.
Why is the silence worse? I mean, in 2018, we wanted them to shut up.
In 2018, the incels were loud, they were messy, they were posting everywhere. But because they were loud, they were visible. You could argue with them. You could ban them. Intelligence agencies could monitor them. They were processing their anger, even if it was toxic.
They're letting off steam.
Exactly. But the quiet ones in 2026, these are the men who didn't age out. They didn't find community. But they saw everyone else get banned or mocked, so they stopped posting.
They started stewing.
Collison uses the phrase pressure cooked, and it's perfect. The ideology didn't weaken, it condensed, it became internalized.
So these are the guys who have absorbed it all.
They've absorbed the hatred so deeply that it's just part of their operating system now. It's not a phase anymore, it's their identity. And because they aren't posting on public forums, we can't track them. They're completely off the radar.
And history tells us that when violence happens, real mass violence, it rarely comes from the guy who is arguing in the comments section every day.
Correct. The loud ones are usually seeking attention. The dangerous ones are the ones who have been silent for years. The manifesto that comes out after an attack usually reveals years of this silent, unchecked absorption of hate.
They've been building a worldview in total isolation.
Without anyone there to challenge it.
So we have these four groups. The ones who grew up and moved on, the ones who found better friends, the ones who pivoted to being trad patriarchs, and the ones who went dark.
That's the landscape of 2026.
So to answer the question of the welfare check, are they okay?
The answer is it's nuanced. Some are. I'd argue the majority probably are. They're that 28-year-old guy at your office who's a little quiet, maybe a little awkward, but he does his job and goes home.
He's fine.
He's fine. He survived his own brain development.
But some aren't.
Some absolutely are not, the long-term residents. And there's a group in limbo, too. Men who aren't violent, aren't trad, but are just existing in quiet desperation. They aren't radicalized terrorists, but they aren't happy either. They're just lonely men in a world that doesn't really know what to do with them.
It really hits home, that point Collison makes.
Mhm.
Just because the camera's turned off doesn't mean the movie ended.
That's the key takeaway for me. We stopped watching because it stopped being breaking news. We stopped getting the dopamine hit of being outraged by their posts. But the phenomenon didn't end, it just became less visible. It's submerged.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
We assume silence means solution, but sometimes silence just means silence.
Right. And we need to be really careful not to mistake the absence of headlines for the absence of a problem.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a thought. Based on that fork in the road concept, we live in a world that is increasingly lonely for everyone, but specifically for young men. And we seem to lack a reliable way to point them toward the action path.
That's the challenge, isn't it? How do we build a culture that encourages young men to choose the discomfort of the gym or the discomfort of learning a skill or joining a club or asking someone out and getting rejected over the comforting anesthesia of the forum?
Because one path allows for surprise.
Yeah.
It allows for the possibility that you might be wrong about how much you suck.
And the other path guarantees you'll never find out.
That is the thought for the day. Next time you see a young guy who seems a little lost, ask yourself, is he heading toward the weight room or is he heading toward the forum? And is there anything you can do to nudge the steering wheel?
It might make all the difference.
That's all for this deep dive. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.